Ok, allora il piacere del networking, di ritrovarsi dopo tanto tempo, sicuramente ha rallentato un po' i tempi di questo break, però adesso siamo pronti a ricominciare, andremo direttamente al cuore di quello di cui stiamo parlando, cioè come l'intelligenza artificiale può aiutare, supportare anche il lavoro del risk management, e lo facciamo con un grande ospite internazionale, perché lui è Head of Artificial Intelligence e Innovation ad AXA XL, Ashish Umre, con noi questa mattina. Please join me on the stage, welcome, facciamogli un applauso. Ashish Umre, it's a pleasure having you. I leave the floor to you.
Hello. I think joining just after a coffee break and at a time when, after 3 years, I believe, everybody's coming together, I'm just delighted to see all the embraces, all the hello, how are you doing? It's been a long time. So thank you for the invitation to come and speak and share my thoughts with you, some of the work that we're doing. But also it's a great way to engage with the community, which is thriving, and if anything, a lot more excited to now see each other in person. So I will talk a little bit about how AI and innovation enables integrated risk management, and I'll sort of unpick on a lot of those words which are part of the topic of discussion. But I want to talk about some of the areas which I think are quite useful. If we've seen that over the last few years, especially the last few years, our perception and our way of understanding risk and what risk really means, whether it's to industry, whether it's to society, has really changed. It's been challenged in more ways than one. For one thing, that we know that risk is interconnected in ways that we probably don't understand and appreciate, but we're beginning to. We're also seeing that the types of risks that are growing and are coming to be are not just calling out for an action of us to collaborate and come together, but also build partnerships which we probably never really understood or appreciated. So my talk is going to be sort of broken down into giving you a flavor of what AI looks like, and it's not necessarily specifically around the insurance industry. I want to try and I spent a good part of my life in academia, in doing AI, neuroscience, and cognitive science for about 15, 17 years before I slowly transitioned out and worked in different industries, in retail, in finance, in ad tech and marketing, and so on. And then finally in insurance over the last 5 years. But what I learned from all these industries and my experience in academia taught me a lot about how we can try and connect the dots across such a multidisciplinary thinking to bring to light what is our ability to understand risk in different ways and uncertainty. And looking at this promise of what AI can bring, then moving towards what type of innovations are we sort of trying to tackle at AXA XL and AXA Group. Looking at how, as I said, the evolving nature of risk really challenges us, but also opens opportunities for us. And those examples, again, speak to some of the thinking that we're kind of putting into action. I also want to talk towards the end a little bit about how, as organizations, we can take the opportunity to learn and implement AI in a more effective way. There was through the talks in the morning, we heard from Bruno and the beginning presentations very much about how, you know, buzzwords like Industry 4.0, automation, and different types or elements of AI is bringing a whole area of opportunity. And we see most of you are probably wearing a smartwatch of some kind. From the moment you woke up this morning to the point that you are here and interacting with little devices, and it is all empowered one way or the other by AI. So AI is being multidisciplinary. It's a mixture of a whole range of areas, from philosophy to cognitive science to neuroscience to sociobiology to anthropology and so on and so forth. It touches on fields that you probably have either not heard of or hadn't realized were actually part of the thinking within AI. But when it really comes down to the act of thinking. After you perceive something, you think or process that, and then you respond. And now the response could be with another human, or response with a machine, or acting into the environment. And therefore, this sense and respond capability around some intelligence allows you to then explore a whole range of areas which kind of encompass the types of things we hear about as AI. But keep that thought of multidisciplinary in your head as we go along this talk. Now, you can see several reports published over the last few years and continue to get published, which talk about the promise. It talks about how AI derives value from data. But there's one thing which is really important to highlight. A good AI strategy depends on a good data strategy, which really depends on a good business strategy. And they're all intertwined. If you don't have a good business strategy, which reflects as a good data strategy, and therefore AI or automation or new technology, it doesn't work. And it needs to come together with the right focus on talent and really growth on understanding how you empower the organization by listening to your clients and really focusing on the types of challenges and the problems to solve. So, what does the promise of AI look like? Now, as I said, there's a whole range of industries where AI is embedded currently. And this probably doesn't give you the full appreciation of insurance is a very small bucket there, where actually it's expanding, it's growing. And so is so many other industries, social care, climate change. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. So, as these industries are growing and the types of areas of applications are growing, you can see new types of innovation come out. And we see that. We touch and feel those things on a day-to-day basis. Here's a few examples of things which are really happening now. And believe me, it's a very small subset of recent examples. There's one that you might have seen in news on the top left, which talks about how human brains in a dish are now interacting to play the game of Pong. It isn't AI necessarily, but it is challenging how we're using biology and creating a way to use pulses and reaction to be able to connect and play or interact using feedback. Similarly, AlphaFold, which was essentially an extension of what was DeepMind's solution around AlphaGo to create and solve a big challenging problem around protein folding. And this is also over the last 6-8 months. The one on the bottom left is actually a really interesting one. It's a company called Spacemaker, which was just acquired by Autodesk. So for people who are more technically minded might know what Autodesk is. And it's a way of reimagining what does a sustainable city or a building look like. And it's almost using lots of data inputs to look at what the environmental impact could be, how to use different types of data to almost create a simulation of, can you give me the optimal type or design of building that actually fits within the area and allows us to, create a sustainable architecture and a working space. So, sorry, this is me just playing around with buttons. So what does that mean? How do we get practical about this? And going back to what I just said about our clients are being challenged and we are being challenged around the unpredictable and the complex nature of this risk that is involved. New risks are emerging as new technology is being created. There's scarcity, there's also diversity, and that abundance of technology and new innovation is creating new types of risks. Cyber is a great example of that, how interconnected the nature of cyber across all, effectively, lines of business. It's becoming harder to predict, and it's leading to the types of losses which are unprecedented across the reinsurance industry. And what we're seeing from that is that there's a lot of different things that our clients are really asking us questions. And we as an industry really need to find ways to tackle these. Now, when you look at this, you might realize actually a lot of these risks are either uninsurable or they don't really have currently an insurance product per se. But what it does open an opportunity is to, well, how do we create better mitigation and prevention services to allow us to tackle some of this, help our clients become more proactive than reactive towards these emerging risks. And many of them are multifaceted by its very nature, whether it's geopolitical risk, whether it's climate change. All of them have within them a whole universe of various complications. So back in June or earlier in this year, our group CEO really sent out the statement to say that we do need to build new partnerships. We do need to find newer ways to reimagine how are we going to understand risk and go beyond our traditional ways of thinking around this, which gave to birth of what we call the digital commercial platform. And there's a whole range of reasons why this is relevant and important to bring up in this conversation. One of those aspects is that we're trying to look beyond what is currently traditional protection to go into risk mitigation and services. Now, getting closer to our clients and really getting into a deeper conversation with those types of risks that I just showed you, where we don't quite have an insurance product, but we do want to try and partner with our clients and our partners to really help explore the options available. And some of those can be highlighted through some of the examples that we're working on. Now, one of the areas we found a great opportunity to try and explore is the area of geospatial. Geospatial data has been increasing over the last few years. New satellite constellations are coming, new types of data, whether it's hyperspectral imagery, SAR imagery. It's basically opening up space as a service, where lots of different types of sensors are allowing you to collect data in vast amounts, build the partnerships, and there's huge amounts of companies now investing and startups growing in this area. How does that affect us? Well, it allows us to look at location intelligence in a much more intelligent way. Very, very interesting area of opportunity. And I'll give you some examples of how we're looking at the big challenge of where is my site or where are my properties and what do I know about them. And geocoding or geolocation is one of those areas where you're trying to still struggle with what is building level information or attributes, and how do I try and demystify what does location mean, what's around us, and how do we try and connect the various pieces of information available. And here is an example where we're able to combine using AI, not just computer vision algorithms, but also try and look at local contextual information to join up different information about the site, a client site. And once we put all of that together, we actually understand the holistic nature of what the site's risk profile and risk posture is at that time. This opens a whole new world of having an active conversation with our client to say, your flood profile has changed, how hurricanes would impact you. We can run simulations on how different type of peril scenarios can play out. In a similar way, we've done some work around wildfires, for example. This is an example of California, looking at past history of wildfires as a way to predict, but more importantly, being able to live monitor by bringing new layers of information around water stress, fuel loads, and a whole range of different parameters that you can use now through active satellite sensing. What it allows you to then do is not just provide earlier evidence and intelligence to clients to be able to mitigate, but also bring together the types of partner services we might have in the local area that can come together much quicker than they would have traditionally, because they rely on other means of data. So a great example is some of the work done during the recent hurricane. We have lots of different models in the industry, whether it's RMS, ARA, and so on. But by combining those together, through a platform that we have which looks at event response and is able to look at not just the complex portfolio structures, but look at the whole portfolio of risk that's there, we're able to come up with analysis that is much more informing of what the loss expectancy looks like, but at the same time, what do we need to do as a business to prepare for that kind of. And I almost imagine a world where you can run through big data and these type of model large-scale simulations with billions or trillions of parameters that allow you to give a better view of what could be predicted risk. And allow me to take you another step further, which is how about we bring in long-term factors like whether it's an increase in sea levels or other types of climate parameters. Another part of DCP, along with the service proposition, is AXA Climate and our long-term risk factors of how changes in the long-term demographics of an area or its risk profile can have an impact on strategies for a certain business to look at, should I expand this area, should I go and grow or set up a new operation in this part of the world. We're able to inform those type of strategies by looking at these long-term effects as well, not just the near-term impact on a certain peril. Similarly, as I said, looking at the more granular level of data by bringing together what we know currently that we get through a normal business process, but combining intelligently different types of information at that location level really enriches and allows us to create what would be logical groups that can be put together in very different ways. And you can look at inflation, you can look at other factors that are not normally traditionally looked at always to inform risk. An example that I think I'd like to call out here, a few years ago we worked, our US construction team actually started to create what is a collection of partners, and it slowly grew from what was a couple of partners looking at particular areas where they could bring really good ability to understand and predict construction-related risk. And there's a number of partners you can see on the left. But what they're doing is they're all trying to solve a piece of the puzzle. And the piece of the puzzle is quite complex in itself. But as they come together, they're tackling what is various types of risks related to the construction. What we found is that not just that ecosystem was really informing in the way that we were able to look at the construction book and make it much more risk resilient. We're also able to see that those partners found their own relationships and to go to market in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise done. So we're not here to say that we can solve this by ourselves. We do need partners. We do need to work together as an industry, but also try and build those relationships. And when I talk about relationships, I talk about relationships in whether it's technology providers or vendors, whether it's universities to support fundamental research and take some quite challenging problems there. And it's also supporting startups and a very thriving ecosystem in all countries now. Europe is a thriving place where we see a lot of these companies come up. That's what really helping us accelerate. And it is about accelerating to try and look at a landscape of risk which is just growing faster than we can imagine. There was a talk about digital twins or Industry 4.0 and how that moving from the physical asset to a digital twin. Now, you could talk about digital twin in the context of metaverse, or you could talk about digital twin in the way that we look at physical assets and how data analytics is really empowering us to look at granular information and being able to connect that to a business outcome, not just operational improvement, but actually a business outcome, whether it's production related, customer experience related, or just understand. And those feedback loops that we built inside it really allow you to inform and iterate ways of looking at that risk in a more informed way. Another very pertinent and important area for focus is climate. Now, this slide is quite heavy, but actually talks about, if you look at right at the bottom of the slide, it talks about how AI is actually really helping empower and looking at the different elements of how from measurement or mitigation to adaptation and resilience, and how we can tackle some of these really areas of climate change. All of them would resonate with you at some level or the other. But when we look at the bottom bit, it talks about all the things that I've kind of talked about. When you're looking at not just collecting, we talk about big data. Now, big data is lots of data. when you're able to articulate a business problem or a challenge in an effective way and build a hypothesis, only then are you able to say, well, what is the relevant data I need to collect? It's not about collecting big data, it's about the relevant data that informs about what problem are we trying to solve. How do we collect the right type of data that will help us look at modeling a solution for that problem? And then go about this journey of exploring through solution hypotheses the different possible solutions, and then come up with the right problem-solving approach. And that could be your, is it a viable, is it feasible, and so on. Which all informs around the strength of your decision-making, your planning, and your process improvements. All of that is intertwined. How you optimize those processes moving forward, and use the power of that collaborative ecosystem that you're developing, because you're not trying to solve all the problems by yourself. You know that there's different partners who bring that strength to the mix. And encourage those behaviors, because it is about change management, which is the hardest part of the job. Technology is almost the easy bit in some ways. But putting all of that culture behind by using technology, empowering people to make better decisions, and nurturing the right skills and talent is an excellent way of bringing about change and focus on climate action. And the areas that we're kind of sort of broadly looking at are we're looking at transition risk or energy transition, areas where you're able to now look at a whole range of types of sensing you can do, whether it's methane emissions or emissions in general, looking at damage assessment of floods in different parts, what type of materials are stored in different areas, construction project monitoring from end to end, all of that. And then you have the whole broad range area of natural catastrophes and bringing right information to the right people with the right focus. Combined with the internal expertise that we have and the experience really brings it together for us. I think we've spent a lot of time internally building the talent in our risk engineering and risk consulting division. We're now enabling and empowering those people to really come together through looking at portfolio screening and proactive risk management, but also try and work and bring those partners into mix to really sort of energize and move those changes fast. So I come back to this sort of last bit. I'm trying to match time as well here. So the succeeding of AI and actually implementing AI in your business requires a whole range of things. And again, actually, these things are not different to what was talked about earlier on today. There's a big ethical side, which I haven't really touched, but it's a huge area. AI regulation is coming in. EU has an AI regulation act. UK, every country, most countries are coming up with a national AI strategy. But it really comes down to, what is your business strategy? How do you nurture and grow talent? How do you use infrastructure and data in the most effective way to create foundations? This is all about bringing foundation, because you can only accelerate and build innovation once you have proper foundations of talent, data, infrastructure, and so on. And then put the right governance, which is around ethics and building the thing right, not just building the right thing. And putting all of those things together is not easy, but it is a mantra. It is a way of looking at approaching this. The challenges will not go away. AI is still developing. There's a lot of things you see in AI which aren't always absolutely perfect. You see examples here where you have interpretations of what these images mean to AI in very different ways. And if you're talking about a young boy holding a baseball bat, we clearly know that's not true. But the classification and what type of examples the AI has seen or AIs have seen to be able to come to those conclusions are still not perfect. So we are dealing with something that we need to really handle with care. This comes, it comes with the responsibility of usage and building it. But we also look at other types of challenges, again mentioned here before, around quantification and building all of these digital platform, and the interaction creates for discrimination and a whole range of other areas where human vulnerabilities are exposed in ways that we can't even imagine right now. So as we look at these things, we look at how we use AI as a positive source for change in society, our industry, in communities. And I leave you with that thought in mind. And thank you very much for your time.
Ashish, Umre, thank you so much for your insights. Just a couple, because we're running a bit late.
Yes,
a couple of flash points. One is a question coming from the audience, and the question is, we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning as if they were the same. Is there any difference? Can you, in a nutshell, give us the idea of what's the difference?
So machine learning would be a subset or within, so machine learning, and there's ways of unpicking machine learning as well. There's supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning and deep learning and so on. So it's AI encompasses machine learning is one thing. A lot of people also talk about are machines going to be conscious one day, and a lot of examples you see here and a lot of practical real life examples are very much focused on what is the narrow focused AI, which is about solving one particular type of problem. We are seeing some areas of being able to transfer learnings from one area to the other, which is kind of that multidisciplinary opportunity. But again, ensuring that that transfer and the validation of how you see the outcomes is really important. So machine learning is very much a subset of AI.
Oh, you showed us what keeps your clients awake.
Yes.
But can I ask you what keeps you up at night?
All those things, and climate is definitely one area where I do see, I think we all have become more conscious about the world around us and things that are changing. So I think the more we have conversations outside and internally, we're really looking at how do we create sustainable companies that are able to go and transform the way we're not just looking at improving our business outcomes, we're looking at societal advances. I think it's a great opportunity for us to engage and bring together a community of people who are thinking in the same way and engage with them. So, I welcome challenging questions as much as I welcome a nice discussion to talk about how we can work together closely. So,
absolutely. All right, sounds great.
Thank you very much.
Ashish Umre, AXA XL.